Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The place where it's a regular place for expelling najasat, like the front passage and the back passage, there even if a little najasat comes out, the wudu will break. The place where you don't normally expel najasat from, the place where you don't normally expel najasat from, there it must be a significant amount of najasat to come out for the wudu to break. So I give you an example. If a person breaks wind from his back passage, right? So there, that wind has very little najasat with it. That wind has very little najasat with it. So since it has very little najasat, because it comes out from a regular place where najasat comes out, it will break the wudu. And if you look at a wound, you got a wound and a worm came out there with some blood on it. So we'll say that even though the najasat came out, the worm did come with najasat, or a piece of flesh fell off. So when a piece is like I did in previous times, you get that illnesses you don't get today, leprosy, etc. So a piece of flesh fell off, and that piece of flesh, it had blood with it. It's not a normal place for the expelling of najasat. So that little blood that comes here will not break the wudu. You understood that? So just remember that principle. If it's a place where you normally expel najasat from the body, even if it's a little najasat, the wudu will break. If it's a place where you don't normally expel najasat, then it must be a significant. And I told you, look at the wind. Even if you release little bit wind from the back passage, we'll say your wudu is gone. Why? Because it's a little najasat, but it comes from the place where you normally expel najasat. And if you break wind from the top, even if it's a lot of wind, it comes from your stomach, but it's not normally a place where you expel najasat. So even if there's a lot of wind, it doesn't break your wudu, right? Read that now. See what dab. Now, if you understood that, inshallah, you understood that what the explanation I gave you, the text here will be very, very easy. See what dabatu, the creatures, the little creations, takhruju min ad-duburi that come from the back passage, naqidatun. It will break wudu. Why will it break wudu? Because even though it is little najasat, it's a makhraj mu'tad. It's the place where najasat normally comes out. You understood that? فإن خرجت من رأس الجرح, right? أو سقط اللحم منه لا ينقض. But if the worm comes out from a wound, فإن خرجت من رأس الجرح أو سقط اللحم منه, or some flesh falls off, لا ينقض. Why it will not break? Because this is the najasat is very, very little. When the one comes out, the najasat is very, very little. And also, it is not the normal place where najasat comes out from, right? والمراد بالدابة الدودة. Yeah, in the Shara they say that the reason why he's explaining, but daba normally refers to like a big animal. So yeah, you mustn't think now person a big animal came out from a person's back passage. So he's clarifying this, it's worms, right? It's not even possible for a big animal to come. Right now, see there, they're explaining why in the next ibarat, why they're saying, listen nicely, in the next ibarat, explaining why najasa that comes out from the wound with the worm, why that won't break the wudu. وهذا لأن النجس ما عليها وذلك قليل, because that is because the najasa that is on it, right? The najasa, right? لأن النجس ما عليها, the najasa, what is on it. Ma refers to what the najasa, what is upon the worm, right? That is qalilun. You understood that, right? وهو حدث في السبيلين, and that little najasat, it is a hadath from the front passage and the back passage, right? وهو حدث في السبيلين دون غيرهما. It is not besides the front passage and the back passage. If it's besides the front passage and back passage, that little najasat is not good enough to be a naqidul wudu, a nullifier of wudu. It must be more than that. It must be more than that. فأشبه الجثاء والفساء. Fusa'a, it resembles the wind from the front, from the mouth, and from the back passage. So the wind from the mouth, even though it's a lot, but it's not a makhraj mu'tad, hence not break the wudu. Wal fasa'a, and that which comes from the back passage, even though it has little najasat, because it passed through the najasat, it will still break. Why it will still break? Because it's comes from the makhraj mu'tad. So I'll just repeat it one more time to get it. If The place where the najasa is coming out is a makhraja mu'tad, a normal place where najasa comes out from. Even if a little najasa come out, you say the wudu breaks. But if the najasa coming out from the back passage is a little najasa, and it comes from there, then we will say what? It won't break. And I tell you, even if a little najasa comes from the back passage, a worm with a little feces on it, or wind with little mixed little feces will break. But if a worm comes out from a wound with little feces, then we say it doesn't break. Why? Because it is not a normal place of najasa coming out of the body, right? And then also that's why we say also the wind that comes from the mouth, etc., will not break, right? See then, now the next masa. بخلاف الريح الخارجة من القبل والذكر لأنها لا تنبعث عن محل النجاسة. This is contrary to the wind that comes out most of sifat from the front organ من القبل, right, of the lady قبل, والذكر, and from the front organ of a male, first organ of female, right? لأنها, because لا تنبعث عن محل النجاسة, it does not come, it does not stem from the place of najasat. Okay, first thing they're saying here, that if wind comes from the front organ of a male and comes from the front of a female, then it would not nullify the wudu. Why? Unlike the wind that comes from the back passage, it comes from the bowels where the feces is. So it is mixed with that. And what's the proof? The proof is that it's a bad smell that shows it's mixed with najasat. But if wind comes from the front passage, if wind comes from the front passage, then it does not come from a place of najasat. It's not mixed with the urine, etc., etc. You see what I'm saying? That's why it won't have a bad smell. So the wind that comes from the front passage, it does not come from the repository of najasat of urine. It comes before that. And this is now the logical reasoning. But there's also a author that bears this out. This is سمع أبو هريرة يقول قال الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تقبل صلاة من أحدث حتى يتوضأ. That Abu Hurairah said, I heard Rasul saying the salat of a person not accepted of that person who make hadath until they make wudu. قال الرجل من حضرموت ما الحدث? He said, what is hadath? He said, فساء أو ذرات. I think a fusaun means the silent release of wind from the back passage. Duratun means the loud release of wind from the back passage. Yeah. So this hadith is quite clear that that which emerges from the back passage with sound and that which does not have sound, both of them, they nullify the wudu. And then you see Nabi Sallallahu also didn't mention, according to Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala, that it comes from the front passage. Because the front passage, it does not come from a place of najasat. Are you with me? Right. So here's the interesting masla. حتى لو كان المرأة مفضعة يستحب لها الوضوء لاحتمال خروجها من الدبر. Now the word mufdat is interesting. So okay, first understand this properly now. If the wind comes from the back passage because it comes from a place of najasat, it will break the wudu. If it comes from a front passage here, according to the kitab, it doesn't pass, it doesn't mix with the urine, it doesn't pass your urine, so it will not break the wudu, right? Now the masla is a mufdat. Now when we were in madrasa, we always understood a mufdat means this here, that when the front passage and the back passage of a lady becomes one. And there it's mentioned there, I told you before, like a lot of the illnesses that you see in the kitab, you can't relate to it because this is now solved with modern medicine. But maybe it says, in previous time, maybe because of a woman giving birth to a lot of children or whatever, that now the front passage and the back passage becomes one, right? So this is what I always understood it to be, and if I remember correctly, that is what um, we were explained. That's what I remember. So listen nicely now. So when the front, that's what it says in your kitab, yeah, right. So normally the place of wati, where a husband-wife relationship takes place, that's the same place where the baby comes out, isn't it? So because of kasratul wat and because of lot of childbirth, that becomes one, right? The urine hole and the so what is Kitab is saying? So there's no two separate passages. So if some wind escapes from the bowel and comes through the front passage, you you wouldn't know on it. So it's better to make wudu, right? If she's a mufdat. So if she's a mufdat, every time some wind comes from the front passage, it is better to make wudu because it's very possible that that could come from the bowels. So that is in the kitab they mentioned there, and that is what I understood also all year. But here in this kitab, they're mentioning something interesting. You ever what's a fistula? You know, it's a fistula. A fistula is that like from a person's back passage, beside his back passage, sometimes you get a sore. You know, you get a sore and the thing becomes septic. And then you get a hole, another hole beside your back passage that goes through on the side, maybe close to your back passage. It goes from there and goes to your bowels. So sometimes some najasa also seeps through that. So it's like another, like, sounds a bit cruel, so to say, but you must Google it. Fistula means like you have another back passage. You have another back passage. You know what I'm saying? So you have like two back passages now. It's very, very inconvenient. So sometimes the najasa also comes through that other, and I said this is a result because of when you get it gets septic and then it creates like a sore, and it's sore is like it tunnels a hole from the like around the back passage into. So you have like two, you have another mini back passage, right? So that's a fistula. But now listen, I said I'm telling you what you explained earlier. I explained that is the classic explanation. It's in your kitab, and it's also the classic explanation which I remember when we done in madrasa. But here, this mufti here from the UK here, Mulana Samiruddin, he says in something interesting which makes a lot of sense. He said mufdat actually is where a woman have a. So I was telling you, a fistula is where you have another little passage due to a sore from your bowels that comes out next to your main back passage, right? So what he says here makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. He's saying that sometimes a woman might have a fistula from her back passage into her front passage. So there's a link from her back passage to the front passage, which makes a lot of sense to me to say. So if a woman have that fistula, which is like how it's very treatable, you go to hospital, you can have it treated, etc. So if a woman has this illness where she got this fistula, where you got now a hole going from the back passage, not like somewhere from the bowels coming into the front passage, so that it is possible that the wind that comes from the najasat in the back passage, it will come out in the front passage. You understand what I'm saying? You follow? So that so there's two explanations. One is I told you with the back passage and the front passage becomes one because of abundance of husband-wife relationship and a lot of childbirth. So there's no passage or there's no barrier between. That's in the classical kitabs. And here what the Mufti Sahib is saying, where you have a fistula from the bowels that comes out into the front passage of a woman. Now, medically, I'm not a doctor or anything, but this makes much more sense to me. That because the fistula is actually it's a unique thing. It actually tunnels its way a separate passage. So now, what they're saying in the kitab is, if a woman, whatever we have it, if she got this illness, she's moved back that and whatever it is that some of the air from the back passage or from the bowels, it can come out in the front passage, then it is mustahab for her to make wudu even when air escapes from the front passage. Why? Because it's highly likely that air comes from the place of najasat, which is the bowels. You understand what I'm saying? Look in the kitab now. حتى لو كان المرض مضادا إذا woman is a مضاد يستحب لها الوضوء. It is mustahab for her to make wudu لاحتمال خروجها من الدبر, because it's very possible that even though this wind is coming out in the front passage, it might have come from the back passage, from the place of najasat. Are you with me? Okay, we wanted to finish this thing, but carry on reading there. You got niftatun. فإن كشرت نفtatun. I got you. فإن كشرت نفtatun, right? Carry on. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, this is simple. Once we discussed this much here, you got the open wound, right? You got the cut there, right? And then the blood came out of the wound. and it flowed onto your skin, which you have to normally wash, then there, obviously, we say that is kathrat. It's not a makhraj mu'tad, it's not a makhraj mu'tad, but because it is kathrat, it's a lot, because it flow, it will nullify the wudu. Now what he's saying, sometimes you have a wound, right? So what happens is that blood on the wound, it dries up and it forms a scab. Now this is the body's natural way of healing itself. This is the body's natural way of healing itself. So you got a scab there, and you remove. فَإِنْ قُشِرَتْ, you say that scab was removed, and under the scab there was some type of pus, right? Or there was some type of matter. Now, normally the matter that starts first, it is like a clear liquid. And then as the wound festers, it becomes dark brown, like pus in it, right? So that pus, it now, the scab is removed from the head of the wound, and it flows onto a portion you have to wash. Then that will also nullify the wudu. It will also nullify. Why it will nullify the wudu? Because the pus, it is originally blood. It is blood that has gone bad. You can say in simple words, you can say it is blood that is rotten. So that will also nullify your wudu. Are you with me? So follow now. فَإِنْ قُشِرَتْ نَفْطَةٌ, if the scab was removed, فَسَالَ مِنْهَا مَاءٌ, water flowed from it like a plus. أَوْ صَدِيدٌ, so sadid means the more advanced type of matter, which is more rotten, so to say, right? أَوْ غَيْرُ, whatever is in there. إِنْ سَالَ عَنْ رَأْسِ الْجَرْحِ, if it flowed from the head of the wound, نَقَضَ, it will break, the wudu will break. وَإِنْ لَمْ يَسِلْ لَمْ يَنْقُضْ, but if it remains in the mouth of the wound, it doesn't come out, then it will not nullify the wudu. Then you say, وَقَالَ زُفَرْ يَنْقُضُ فِي الْوَجْهَيْنِ, Imam Zufar rahimahullah, he says, remember, if you remember nicely, you remember Imam Zufar said that when you have a wound and the blood stays on the mouth of the wound, whether the blood comes out or not, so long as the blood is exposed, the wudu will be nullified. Remember? So same thing is saying here, if you remove the scab of a wound, and under the scab you have some pus, whether the pus flows out of the mouth of the wound or whether the pus doesn't flow out of the mouth of the wound, either way the wudu will break. So his masla is similar to the blood masla, that it doesn't have to flow. Are you with me? Well, and then obviously, as Imam Shafi, remember, Imam Shafi says only that comes out of the mukhraj mu'atad. Only that which comes out from the normal places where you expel the najasat from the body, that will. So obviously, this is not a normal place. A wound pus coming out of the wound. It's not a normal place of expelling najasat, so it will not nullify the wudu. وقال الشافعي, so the mouth also, is it a place of expelling najasat? Obviously, it's not a makhraj mu'atad. Although maybe if a person speaks a lot of nonsense, what they say, this guy got verbal diarrhea. Najasat is coming out of his mouth. So maybe for some people, their mouths are makhraj mu'tad in najasa. For some people, their mouths are makhraj mu'tad. But generally speaking, it is not a makhraj mu'tad, right? So as Imam Shafi, in keeping what is usul, he say, only when najasa comes from the front passage or the back passage, when najasa comes from any other place of the body out, it will not nullify the wudu. Exactly. This masla there. وقال الشافعي لا ينقض في الوجهين. Right. وهي مسألة الخارج من غير السبيلين, and this is a normal masla that when the najasat come out from besides the two passages, it will not nullify the wudu, right. وهذه الجملة نجسة لأن الدم ينضج. So here you're speaking about this, all this pus, sadid, and you're speaking all of this here. وهذا is also najis because it is actually blood that has, you can say, so to say, it is fermented, or it's gone bad, it's got rotten. What you come again? Yeah, so that's what he's saying. That all, like, this pus matter, all that stuff, it is blood that is gone bad. So it is in the same hukum of blood, right? Oh, sorry, I got right. So you what you got a nandaju means? Yeah, it become clot, like, or something like that. Yeah. So then it becomes like that water, when you got a wound, right? ثم يزداد نضجا, then it increases in thickness. ثم يصير سديدا, then it becomes like a pus. ثم يصير ماء, then it becomes like a water. So that all these things, its original basis, it comes from blood, which is najis. So it will have the same hukum of blood. And as the different stages, where it becomes pus, it becomes water, it becomes whatever, all that, right? So هذا إذا قشرها فخرج بنفسه. So this here is where a person uh, he peeled off the scab and فخرج بنفسه, and the pus came out. So obviously it is the same hukum as damun sa'ilun. So it's qayhun sa'ilun. It is najasatun sa'ilun, and it is najasat. It is coming out from a ghair mu'atad place, and because it's flowing, it's a lot. Hence, it will make it is a najasat being expelled from the body, and it's kathrat, even though it's from the makhraj ghair mu'atad, a place where najasat don't normally come from. It will break the wudu. Right? This is when it flowed out. وَأَمَّا إِذَا أَصَرَهَا. But look at this. If he got a wound, right? He took the scab off, right? And then he squeezed, like how you have a pimple, you have a boil, and now you're squeezing it out. You want to squeeze out. وَأَمَّا إِذَا أَصَرَ فَخَرَجَ بِأَسْرِهِ فَلَا يَنْقُضُ. Then we say it will not nullify the wudu. لأنه مخرج, because it was taken out. وَلَيْسَ بِخَارِجٍ, and it never come out. So according to this principle of Sahib Hidayah, if you squeeze the najasat out of a wound, or you squeeze the blood, or you got a boil, and you squeeze all out, remember we've already understood all that matter in a boil, that pus, that water, all of that's najis, because it comes from water. So you squeeze it out, right? And so yeah, it never come out on its own. According to this ibarat, your wudu will not break, because it did not come. It's laysa bi kharijin, it never come out. Like in mukhraj is something which was removed out. It was ikhraj. But the fatwa is not on this. The fatwa is this here. If that what you squeezed out, it was so much that it will flow, then also it will nullify the wudu. Right? Okay, so we'll stop there. So remember that even though you squeeze it out, yeah, that's what Sahib Hidayah is saying, is if you squeeze it out, it won't nullify the wudu. But the fatwa is, even though you squeeze it out, but if there's so much it will flow, then it will also nullify the wudu, right? We'll stop there. We'll continue tomorrow, inshallah. I hope everything is clear, inshallah. But subhanallah wa bihamdi subhanakallah.